All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the agenda has been approved. Board and committee actions, there was none because we did not meet, committees did not meet in December. So Mr. Kelly and Mr. Sultan can save their vocal cords until February's meeting. There is no consent agenda. There's no action agenda, no new business, no information items. We're on to monthly reports. Financial summary, Sally.
Good afternoon. I have our November financial results for us to look at. Operating revenues totaled 135 million, which was above the forecast of 124 million. As a reminder, 5.2 million of this variance was due to a revenue equalization fee. Non-operating revenues totaled 107.3 million, which is above the November forecast of 43 million. And that is due to the data centers that rolled into 2025 that were expected in 2024, along with the expansions that we had. Operating and non-operating expenses are under forecast by 7.9 million. And then here's our ERCs through November, but as you just heard, we're up to 4,907. So we're a little short of our 5,000 mid-year forecast, but more than, our initial budget was 2,000. So we did well in availability fees for the year. 54% of those are data centers. That's the blue box there. And there's your breakout of revenues as of November. And then our CIP spend as of November, we're at 85% of our mid-year reforecast at 112 million spend. And then finally, the breakout of CIP between user rates and availability fees. So user rates funded 871,000 of the November expenses, and availability funded the remaining 4,300,000. Any questions?
What was the number for December? Is it about 800? Is that what it was? 700 or 800?
For ERCs?
Yeah. I know it's not in the report, it's only through November, but since you teased,
That sounds right.
since you teased us with the,
About 400, 300.
Okay.
Yeah.
that's pretty low given we had a 7% rate increase that's taking effect, right? Don't people try to get in before?
Sometimes. Yes. Yes.
Because I usually remember December being a bigger month than.
But yeah, as you'll see, 2024 was a big year for December, but it does kind of fluctuate.
Okay.
But yes, we do tend to see some folks try to get in before the next rate increase.
All right.
When does it take effect again?
January, it went into effect January 1st.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yep.
Anybody else have any questions for Sally? Right. Water resource report, Jessica Edwards Brandt and Kinsey.
Okay. All right. I will go through the water resources reports. I do have an extra slide today to go through. So if you have any questions, just feel free to ask while we go through this. So December was a dry month. We did have two watch advisories in the month of December, one for the Potomac River Basin precipitation, and then a carryover on a watch for regional drought status. So this is just specific statistics from Loudon Water's withdrawal around the Potomac River. Everything looks pretty normal. That's pretty normal for December for the Potomac, but because it has been so dry in December, we did see the Potomac River drop a little bit at the Point of Rocks. It's still, this is a drier year, so we're seeing this is a normal trend for a drier year. So no, it's a normal advisory status for the Potomac River itself. As I mentioned before, the Potomac River Basin precipitation, there was quite a bit. We are in a deficit. We're just at 11%, which puts us in the watch advisory status. Okay, so now I want to run through the Metropolitan Washington Regional Water Supply Drought Coordination slide. And there were some questions about this slide at the last meeting. So I just want to walk through sort of the purpose of this slide. So really it's just to get, it's a summary of what's going on in the region among the water providers related to the Potomac River, specifically drought. Basically what I do is on this slide is I add a bullet for what's called the Water Supply Outlook Report, which is a report that's created by ICPRB. And I'll walk through that in the next slide because it is quite lengthy. But then I also try to add a bullet on, are we in a drought? Are we drought monitoring? Are we, above normal, below normal precipitation, that kind of thing. And then I also, because the way that report is set up, I do include a bullet for, are there any planned Potomac River upstream reservoir releases? And then also I include a bullet for drought coordination meetings. So often the water providers will meet routinely to talk through drought. And we also just performed a drought exercise in December. So, okay, so let's go through the Water Supply Outlook Report. So this is like a 5 to 6 page report that ICPRB Co-op staff puts together. It did include a link. It's a public report, so you can go and look at that report at any time. If you just Google it, you could probably just Google Water Supply, Potomac River Water Supply Outlook Report, and it would come up. And then there's a little hyperlink within the text on that website. But I just took a screenshot of the first page. You could kind of see what that looks like. So ICPRB creates this report on a monthly basis between April and October of each year, but they do predict out until December or to the end of the year. And the purpose of the report is to provide an update on the possibility of water supply releases from the upstream reservoirs. So Jennings Randolph, which is the Army Corps of Engineers, and then a Little Seneca Reservoir, which is actually a WSSC reservoir. And it's based on a model that ICPRB runs. It's a conditional probability model. The model inputs include annual precipitation. They also add some climate outlook data. It includes stream flow data, groundwater data, and then the metropolitan area water demand forecast, or basically how much water are all of us from the metropolitan area or DC area pulling or withdrawing from the Potomac River. So that input also goes into the model. What's important, though, to note is we focus a lot on the point of rocks gauge, the USGS point of rocks gauge for land water. But this particular Outlook report and this particular model is really focused on what the USGS Little Falls gauge is looking like, okay? And so that's, I think, kind of maybe where some things get a little, because it is there are two gauges, so let's kind of keep them straight. So the model does look at conditional probability and then also historical probability. So really what the model is trying to show is that if the flow in the Potomac River drops to what they're saying is a low level, which is 600 to 700 million gallons per day, add that Little Falls gauge, that anything over 10% probability is what they're designating as an above normal release. So it's very, very conservative. So typically when you think of above normal, you're thinking like, oh, over 50%, but that's not how this particular model is interpreted. Yeah. It's the probability. %, is saying that when they run the model, if there's a 10% chance that the model says that the river that the gauge at Little Falls shows anything less than 700 million gallons per day, if there's a 10% probability of that, then they put that in, okay, there's above normal chance for release. And that makes sense because we don't want anything near 10%, right? We want to keep the level to be high. So we're over preparing as a region by doing that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
It says, I gotta find my place again.
Oh, you're reading the fine print in the,
Yeah,
geez.
that's where the good details are. it says, groundwater levels are near long-term averages. As a result, drought conditions have intensified in the upper Potomac Basin, where 61% of the basin is now classified in moderate to extreme drought. Well, then how are we near long-term averages, but is that just a bigger region that's near long-term averages?
Are you reading that? Is that in the that's probably like the summary part? I can't-
No, it's under summary
Summary,
conclusions. It just seems
summary, right.
contradictory to say that we're near long-term averages, but 61% of the basin is classified in moderate to extreme drought. Just, no. I'm not trying to rewrite the
Yeah.
report, but it's the same thing with this 10% above,
Well, I believe what they're saying is the groundwater is average, but drought has to do with other things besides groundwater. And that is the lack of precipitation right now could be driving their drought characteristic and not just groundwater. And I think that's where it's confusing because those words can mean many things. So similar to what Kinsey's going to talk to you, a lot goes into declaring like drought concerns. So they're saying groundwater is okay, but we are still really in drought. And maybe that's usage, maybe that's geology. But
right.
that would be my interpretation of what's going on with those two words.
That makes more sense then.
I have a question, going back to the comment with Mr. Yudd in terms of the statement about the Potomac flow drops below 600 to 700 MGD at Little Falls. Why is it 600 to 700? Why isn't it a discrete 600 or 7? I mean, how's that being set?
Well, I think, well, that's a good question.
I think I can help answer that question. I think there are some key dependencies in ICPRB's model. So Little Falls is sort of one of the last gauging stations past all of the major water supply intakes. And so that's sort of the point of environmental flow by, so to speak. And so there's sort of an absolute minimum amount of water that they want to see flow past all of the intakes and into the environment, to keep kind of everything downstream, the tidal basin area, all of the tidal part of the Potomac, not into a negative environmental condition. And so this threshold is set up above that some bit at 600 to 700 MGD, but also another key variable is what are the demands of the water suppliers in the region during these model runs? Like it may be that demands are somewhat lower.
So you're saying that threshold changes. Sometimes it's 600 or it's anywhere between that
Yes.
range.
Yeah.
is what I'm-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
if you're adding up just to make it easy math, like we're taking on, let's say Loudon Water is withdrawing 100 million gallons a day from the Potomac. Fairfax Water is also withdrawing 100 million gallons a day. Washington Aqueduct, you're adding it up, right? So we have to have a certain 100 million gallon a day flow by at Little Falls. Once you add that up, it kind of puts us in this 600 to 700
Range. Yeah, understood. Thank you.
range. Anything else on that?
I do have a question. Sorry if that was so loud. So we have one reservoir right now and we're going to have more reservoirs that we'll be filling. Are we part of this program for potentially having to release some of our own reservoir water?
Oh, it's
No.
no.
And there's no plan for in the future that we would do that
not,
with?
no, not that.
Okay,
Not that.
thank you.
Okay, and then just to finish up, so Goose Creek is in normal status and Beaver Dam Creek Reservoir also in normal status. And that is the end. Unless anyone else has any more questions, I'll pass it over to Kinsey.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. Take it away, Kinsey.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me as always. As we get the presentation turned around, I'll give you a little heads up. So on our community systems groundwater overview page, we are still watched for the Raspberry and Selma water system, mainly due to some slightly declining wells that are remaining stable for the most part. We'll touch on that a little bit later. And that local precipitation has been lacking this year. And here's that associated slide. A lack of precipitation is our biggest stressor this year. As we wrap up 2025, we are kind of coming close to the lowest level on record. We'll end up above that. We'll reset next year and you'll see that kind of tracked in our long-term drought monitoring page, which is the next one. Winter usage for the Raspberry and Falls and Selma communities are low. This is kind of the, I guess, least usage you'll see throughout the year. Mainly it's indoor usage. and kind of is kind of a point where there's not a lot of stressors on the system from outdoor water usage or extra water usage. I introduced this slide, this presentation. I just wanted to bring awareness that though the Raspberry and Selma water system is under watch, there is a difference between the Selma wells and the Raspberry wells. The Selma wells are performing well. They're considered normal, and the Raspberry wells are yellow due to decline. That flexibility in the groundwater monitoring program allows us to kind of shift operations as needed. Nothing is happening right now. That's something we could do in the future, but it kind of highlights possibly the localized rainfalls we've seen over time, as well as possible local land uses. We don't know exactly why just yet, but we do have that flexibility out there. It shows kind of the detail the groundwater monitoring program can provide us, and it kind of shows the issue with tracking neighboring, I guess, well uses in the hard bedrock fractured well systems. And naturally, we continue to do best practice messaging. Switching over to regional information, our drought status for the entire region is still, we've actually increased to be, let me get to my slide. Severe drought for the entire county, and our Virginia Drought Monitoring Task Force for precipitation, groundwater flow is in the emergency status. Reservoirs are normal, and our Northern Virginia region right now is under watch. We'll discuss, this came up in the last board meeting. We'll discuss why, how they make that determination in a couple slides. Next slide, just for reference, the 4 wells in the Northern Virginia region. 3 of them are in emergency, and the one up there in Nearsville is under watch. So the big question last time was, how does the state, or how did the DEQ Drought Monitoring Task Force determine that we are watch, even though we do have 3 kind of RID designated, I guess, pre-states, right? So I'm gonna be speaking to the graphic to the right. It's summarized on the left, but generally the state work group only gets together when there's a drought. They do look at precipitation, reservoir level, flow, and groundwater. They take that data, and from their different perspective backgrounds, right? We have agriculture, we probably have some kind of businesses, we have water utilities. They determine what's best, kind of considering the time of year, what's being pulled and what's happening. In the Northern Virginia region, they do look at COG, they do look at ICPRB, and they weigh that heavily into it. So groundwater may not push as much as other, I guess, sources. Through that, they make a declaration of regional drought scope. This is once a month. I think we noticed that last time during this presentation. It comes out halfway through the month. So it only comes out once a month. And they use this more as a, I guess, a heads up to local governments. So under the drought watch, the yellow, they're looking at increased communication and awareness to these people. They want local governments to start dusting off their drought management guidelines, what they would do if it gets worse. If it goes orange, they're going to increase that communication. They're going to do direct communication to these boards, and they're going to ask that people start doing voluntary water conservations. And if it goes red from this table, we do go to a drought emergency, and the governor issues an executive order, which really kind of starts dictating what state agencies can pull and use from a water resources standpoint. I think a big takeaway from the guidance and from what this group tries to do, they do try to leverage the knowledge and the use of the local agency. So I pulled some information from the bottom or a direct sentence. Actions by local governments, individual water suppliers, and individual citizens are much more important and effective than any guidance they could do or restrict. A lot there. We do have a link there if you want to kind of see it yourself, but any questions about possibly how they use this information and how they come to a professional defensible judgment for the designation?
I've got a question. A lot of times we're struggling with the distinction between the community systems, which would be groundwater dependent, and drought conditions or well conditions that are, stresses that affect production and capacity of well, in addition to drought. And then there's the Potomac River, which we just talked about in the earlier discussion. So does this task force cross between groundwater drought conditions for those that are served by groundwater resources and like our central system for surface for the Potomac River?
I think they try to the best of their ability. I do think that when it comes to the surface water withdrawal Potomac, they do look to COG to make the determination. They kind of rely on their recommendations above anyone else's. And when it comes to groundwater, they're probably looking to larger systems. I think this group tries to speak for the larger population, which kind of in our region is that surface water withdrawal. And they know that when they do trigger these, that some of the private residents, there is no kind of oversight on them. So I think they try to bridge it, they try to bring awareness, but I think when it comes to the bigger determination, they're taking into like the area as a whole and probably where the I don't know, the population gets their water from.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and I think this is responsive to the type of things we were raising earlier. What additional information is out there about monitoring the impact of drought? What do we need to be ready to do? And I think we're still going to have all our questions that we have for you every month because it's a topic that I think all of us want to be ahead of, on top of, ready to help you guys do what you need to do at the staff level if something's needed at the board level. So thank you.
Welcome. In addition, I think it makes sense to Mr. Allen's question on their previous board item, which was it all works together. So when we don't have rain, you start kind of getting worried. We go to yellow because it's not recharging, but we do have other indicators that are fine. If the river is up, it's feeding the groundwater. If it's raining a lot, it's going to the surface water to the groundwater. So they're actually looking at it as a whole and how it plays. And I think when you start seeing some of those triggers change, maybe high usage, maybe no rain, people start moving to the yellow to bring awareness, hopefully in advance of the orange. And that's our goal and our designations, by the way, on the first slide.
Mr. Yudd, if I may, I don't want to steal Kinsey's thunder, but Kinsey has set up a meeting for staff to meet with Jamie Emery. And so we can have an in-depth discussion with him about what he's seen for as far as groundwater in the West and those sorts of things. And then depending on how that conversation goes, there may be an item either at a board retreat or a future water resources committee where we can bring him in and provide the board with some more outside expertise than just ourselves. So I did want to note that that is planned.
Isn't there a study going on as far as additional water sources for the region? Has anybody heard anything about the status of that study? Or am I all wet?
I would say, I think you're referring to sort of coordinated through both COG and ICPRB, but a look at additional storage and some quarries. And so it's primarily dealing with the Potomac and the surface water sources. I think that's probably what you're referring to.
I thought it was additional water sources, alternate water sources from
Well,
not
there's
not
actually,
using the Potomac.
well, there's actually also DC Water. And maybe I think we talked about that last time a little bit. DC Water is looking at reuse from Blue Plains. So that I think is probably the other one, maybe been
Maybe that's what.
used the last month or so, couple months.
Maybe that's
So maybe
what-
that's it as well. And that would be, you know, sort of an alternative as well. I don't know if,
I thought there was I thought that one
But-
time there was a study. I didn't think it was reuse. I thought it was a study of looking for alternate sources. Not using the Potomac. Do I have that wrong?
I don't know. Is it like a regional thing? I
Yeah.
think,
Oh, maybe I'm going senile. I just thought that,
yeah, I don't know what it would be besides those.
Maybe desalination.
maybe that's what.
We're going, all going senile, just
Yeah,
at a slower pace. All right,
And just wrapping up, here's a graphic of the location of the USGS wells. Same locations used by Virginia DEQ, except they use the data a little differently, just pull it at different times of the month. And so you have the Nearsville well, that location number 1. It has Leesburg well, and you have that well in Prince William County. It's pretty shallow. Here's their corresponding depth. You can see why they're dipping down this time of year, with the Leesburg well being in the, I guess, the normal range. Happy to address any questions.
does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Downs? All right, thank you, Kinsey, thank you, Jessica. Our last report is the water and sewer agreement by Hui Tran. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Tran?
Yeah, there's just one item I'd like to
bring to the board, point out to the board is on page 2. We did have one developer agreement that had reimbursement. It was for approximately 1,900 linear feet of 16-inch of a reclaimed water line that is being installed by a data center that's eligible for reimbursement.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vega? It'll never end, I'm sorry. All right. Well, that concludes the open portion of our meeting today. I want to thank staff for participating. And we are going to move into a closed session.